Good morning, good morning, good morning. Friday. Friday. Monday. See, that's how you know it's a Monday. I just call that a Friday. That's kind of funny, y'all. Yeah. How's everyone doing today? Are we doing well? Yeah, let's see if I can. There we go. Unlock that. Let's shrink this down. Why are we so zoomed in here? What's going on? Sorry. Let's remove you. Yeah. Pretty sure I want to do that. And then let's shrink this down. How's everyone doing? I'm doing well. It's good to hear. Alex, hi Barry. Hi Tyler. Hi Kaylee. Christian, hello senor. I shall watch Rise of the Skywalker today. Yeah, it's on Disney Plus, is it not? Have you seen it? I liked it a lot. Like, I gotta say, I know like a lot of people gave reviews and said it wasn't like the greatest thing ever, but I highly disagree. I think it was fabulous. I loved it. There was one scene in the movie that I thought they should have went another way, which is the scene, and I'm not going to spoil it, but the scene with Chewie in the spaceship, if you know what I'm saying, if you've seen the movie. They should have just, continued that thread instead of reversing it. But for those of you people who don't know what I'm talking about, otherwise, I loved it. I got a little sunburn yesterday. Look at that. A little sunburn. I can't believe we aren't going back. I know. Like, I don't like it. I gotta be honest, because I haven't mastered this home thing yet. Like, I feel like I'm just a big fat like that, you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like I'm not doing anything. Like, I do some yard work, but like I gotta start working out. I gotta start being like, oh, I got my life in order. I gotta get to bed early. I got to wake up earlier. Today I woke up pretty good though. I woke up at like 8 a.m., which is pretty good. But anyway, I just can't get it. So like, I don't know, Delaney. But now that we know that we're not gonna be here, we're not going back, I'm saying, I think we should really try to like master our routine while we're home. You know what I'm saying? Didi, no spoilers, sir. Spoiler-free chat, okay? But I agree, Didi. No, I like Palpatine. Palpatine was fine. I got no problem with Palpatine. Yes, the scene was not good. They should have just to Chewie. That's all I'm saying. Then it would have made the stakes so much higher. You know what I'm saying? Mark, how are you, Mark? Good to see you in the chat. Yeah, it's kind of stupid. I agree, but it's not. That wasn't the problem with the movie. The problem with the movie is that in all those movies, they need to kill. I hate to say this, right? But they need to kill more characters, because when you kill main characters, it makes the stakes that much higher, and it makes it believable, like they're actually in danger. If everyone lives at the end, then watching the movie, no one's gonna die, and then all the action scenes don't have that high stakes that it needs to be exciting. Yeah, Rogue One I agree. I think Rogue One might be my favorite Star Wars movie, honestly. It was so good. And everyone dies in Rogue One. Spoiler. So, there you go. Good. And that end scene with Darth Vader, like, killing everyone, that's like Star Wars at its best. I liked scenes from Solo, but they could have did a better job. But it's weird. I liked the way Solo looked. I liked all the actors. I don't know. There was something missing with Solo. Revenge of the Sith. It's funny, Dante, that you say that, because I hated the 1, 2, and 3, but 3 is the best one, and we watched it again recently with my son, and Revenge of the Sith is pretty good. It's not that bad. I liked it. I still think though, I think Empire Strikes Back is just the best one, in my opinion. But 3 was good, Derek. Like, honestly, like 1 and 2, 2 is the worst movie I think ever made. But like, Revenge of the Sith was actually not a bad flick. It was not bad. And the first one was good. It just was slow, and they killed what's his name? Darth Maul, and he was such a good bad guy. They should have saved him. He should have been the new Darth Vader. I don't. But I'm not Kathleen Kennedy, and I'm not making decisions for Star Wars, so there you go. I think, though, that was George Lucas. The Last Jedi was a horrible movie at first. I disagree. I like The Last Jedi. I thought it was alright. The end was... The whole scene with Finn and the girl, where they go to, like, the casino planet, they need to cut that out of the movie. It was terrible. Yes, he's in a lot of the cartoons. In, Clone Wars, right? Yeah. Darth Maul technically lived. That's true. You are correct, Mark. And I hear in the Clone Wars, when he lived, he's amazing. I hear, like, he's the best thing. Yeah. No, they're not rumors. Mark's right. In the Clone Wars, Darth Maul is alive. Hello, people. Sorry I'm late. Steven, it's okay, buddy. We're still talking about Star Wars since today is Star Wars Day, and the last Star Wars movie is being released on Disney+. So you haven't missed much. Delaney, do you like Star Wars, Kaylee and Delaney? I'm just curious. Are there any females in the chat that enjoy the Star Wars movies? I'm more of a Star Trek. No, you don't. Yeah, that's cool, Kaylee. I'm more of a Star Trek fan, which is like embarrassing to admit to nowadays. But yeah, no, I never watched it. Delaney, yeah, well. Whatever floats your boat. Do you know what I've been watching on Netflix, though, which is pretty good, is that Virgin River. You gotta check that out. Mr. Vulture gets mad that more characters don't die, but also is annoyed that Darth Maul died. You shush it, Alex. I'm talking about good characters, okay? They need to kill more good characters. That's what they need to do. I have never seen one Star Wars movie. Well, there you go, Barry. Did you ever see Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter or Matrix? Anything like that? Dante, what they do? What is Mando Barris? I don't know what that is. Disney will eventually figure out a way to bring back Palpatine. No, I think Disney's done. I think that when Disney starts making more Star Wars movies, they're going to be completely new storylines, kind of like The Mandalorian is, which, by the way, I really enjoyed The Mandalorian. So, Star Trek is space politics. That's why I like it. You know, as a social studies teacher, I love that. Love that space politics. That's a great way to describe it, too. Anywho, so today we are going to be learning about the fall of the Soviet Union, which you guys can see behind me. Let's make this big. Boom. Here we go. The fall of the Soviet Union. And today, speaking of space politics, we're going to be talking a lot about crazy, in-depth politics, because when a country falls apart, like the Soviet Union fell apart, it doesn't just happen because of one reason. There are several reasons, and today historians are still adjusting their teachings, right, and their theories as to why exactly the Soviet Union fell apart. Countries fall apart all the time, right? But you don't go from being a superpower like the Soviet Union was, right? That was matching the United States, to actually falling apart. And that's where it becomes interesting. How did they become literally one of the highest countries in the world to gone? Okay, you hear my I got allergies. I do not have COVID. It's allergies, I promise. Yeah, when they made a deal with Lucasfilms, they said they could only make a few more movies part of the storyline, but they can still make other stories. You know, I don't know if that's true, Tyler. I think they straight up bought Star Wars. I think George Lucas literally sold them all of Star Wars, and they can do whatever they want. They can make Luke Skywalker run around in a tutu if they wanted to. Like, it's they own it, you know? Because the Soviet Union was like an ice cream cone, it looked good at first, and then after a while, it gets mushy and falls to the ground. Which leads me to this, James. Today we're gonna be right. Check out this cartoon. Hold on, let me make myself disappear here. All right, I am the great and powerful Soviet Union. So you guys might remember this from The Wizard of Oz. There's a scene in The Wizard of Oz where the wizard is this giant thing, but really he's just the mayor of the Emerald City, hiding behind a curtain, talking through the microphone that makes his voice sound big and scary. And so it looks like the wizard is this huge, powerful thing, when really it's just this guy. And here, this cartoon is kind of making that same joke, right? It's saying that the Soviet Union is acting like, I am the great and powerful Soviet Union. And you see like this big smoke and lightning bolts and this big military head, and all these people have they're bowing their hands down because they're all terrified of this great and powerful Soviet Union. But yet, it's all a farce. It's all fake. that the truth is the Soviet Union, much like the Wizard of Oz, is really just a guy, and the guy he's not that big and strong. It's fake. And so a little bit of understanding the fall of the Soviet Union is to understand that it was not ever as strong as it appeared to be. It was strong militarily, right? They defeated the Nazis. They had one of the largest militaries in the world. They had nuclear weapons, but they also suffered in other areas, right? Their economy was not that good. The quality of life for people who lived in the Soviet Union was not as high as the quality of life here in the United States or in other capitalist countries in Europe. They really suffered with food. They had a hard time growing food and getting options in the supermarkets and things like that. Their supermarkets were often very limited in what you could buy. They did not have the freedom and the options that we have. And so the Soviet Union really suffered in a lot of ways. Their homes did not have the amenities that our homes have in the United States. And so even though the Soviet Union on paper looked like this giant, big, strong country, in reality, they did not enjoy the same quality of life that the United States had. And that is something that we're going to be covering today by looking at Ronald Reagan, Perestroika, and Glasnost. Let me duck. There you go. So these are the three reasons the Soviet Union is ultimately going to collapse, and I'm going to add one more. Right? Let's add it right now. Soviet Union, Ronald Reagan, Perestroika, Ronald Reagan. Here we go. Chernobyl. There we go. There we are. All right. And so, sorry, making myself a little smaller. There we go. So these are the four reasons that the Soviet Union is going to collapse. Ronald Reagan and the United States as president during the 1980s, his policies towards the Soviet Union are going to add pressure and going to just magnify the problems that are happening in the Soviet Union. We're going to talk about that. Of course, the nuclear disaster at Chernobyl power plant in the Ukraine. So Chernobyl is this power plant that has a meltdown. And some of you might have seen the HBO miniseries. It's phenomenal, horrifying, and scary, but it's true. So check it out. But it's rated R, so extra parents. There's no nudity or anything. It's more just like violence and cursing. So with Chernobyl, there's a nuclear meltdown, and it's really bad. Like it affects 100 square miles, and at times they thought there was going to be a nuclear explosion from the power plant and a complete meltdown. And they even said it could affect places as far away as Poland and Germany. And it was just going to be this huge disaster. And the Soviet government kept it under wraps, and they lied to their own people about it. And as more and more got out, it became clear that it was costing the Soviet Union billions of dollars to fix this problem. They had to evacuate an entire city, and they lied to their own people about it, and it really was just this disaster. So we're going to get back into Chernobyl. And then there are these two programs that the Soviet Union Prime Minister, the premier of the Soviet Union, comes up with, called Perestroika and Glasnost. And these two programs are ultimately, people believe, to be like kind of the beginning of the end of the Soviet Union. And so we're going to talk about these four things today, and we're going to get back to it. Okay? So I am going to significantly slow down the chat. I'm not going to shut it down, but I will slow it down. We're going to go down to 60-second delay on everyone, so you only get to post one thing every minute, just so that when I talk about this, you guys can pay attention. There are some really, this is a really political lesson, and you really need to pay attention because it's confusing. We're using words like perestroika and glasnost, words that you have never heard before, and so you really want to make sure you're paying attention to understand why the Soviet Union collapsed, especially if you want to be able to answer the question of the day today, which is going to be all about this. So, you ready? Here we go. We already did this. So, Ronald Reagan takes oath as the 40th president and promises an era of national renewal. Minutes later, 52 U.S. hostages in Iran fly to freedom after a 440-day ordeal. So a couple things happen. After the United States loses Vietnam, right, we leave Vietnam in 1973. By 1975, the North Vietnamese have completely taken over South Vietnam and have turned the country communist. So in 1975, the morale of the United States is pretty shot. Right, we just had a horrible war where it was very unpopular in the United States. On top of that, we talked about the Kent State Massacre. We talked about, how the government was lying to the American people about Vietnam. We talked about, all these bad things happening. And the American public really could not have thought less of the U.S. government back then. And we really were disappointed. In 1975, when the United States lost and it became official because the North Vietnamese turned the whole country communist, so everything we fought to prevent happened anyway. It really was bad for America. Richard Nixon left the presidency. He resigned during Watergate. We'll talk about that at another time. We're going to talk about that more with, like, the civil rights. We're not going to talk about that so much with the Cold War. So he leaves his office. He resigns before he gets impeached. And Gerald Ford becomes president, and then Jimmy Carter becomes president. And these two presidents are not that successful, right? Jimmy Carter is president during the late 1970s, and the United States goes into a recession. The popularity of America is kind of down because of the Vietnam War, and the U.S. economy really slows down. And what happens is, I'm looking at the chat, sorry. I don't understand. How long are people staying president? Okay, anyway. So what happens is, the economy slows down. People really start to blame Jimmy Carter and just his government, as people do when the economy slows down. And then U.S. hostages are taken in Iran, okay? And the United States government is trying to figure out ways to save these hostages. So now you have our economy is shot. We just had the loss in Vietnam. And now we have U.S. hostages being captured in Iran. And U.S. morale is really low. And then you have this president, this new guy on the scene called Ronald Reagan. And he's going to run against Jimmy Carter. And in 1980, he becomes president. And Ronald Reagan is special for a couple of reasons. One, he's an actor. Right, he's a famous actor from Hollywood during the 60s, and he's famous, right? So, and he's very charismatic, and he's very well spoken. And Ronald Reagan one of the things he does that's very successful is he talks about bringing back an era of national renewal, meaning he's going to bring back America back to being like the strong country that we were, and make people proud to be an American again. And so that's one of the things he does. And one of the ways he's going to do this is by kind of building up American might and making America strong, right? Forget Vietnam, forget the hostage situation in Iran, forget our bad economy. He's going to make America strong, and he's going to make the Soviet Union our punching bag a little bit to show the world that America is not just going to lie down and die because we lost the Vietnam War. That was just a bump in the road. We're going to be a great country, It should be said that during this time, too, that Hollywood started to embrace this. They started to make more movies that were very pro-American, like Rambo and Top Gun and G.I. Joe during the 1980s. And these are all things that culturally really started to build the identity of America again. We kind of lost our way in the 70s, right? So the Ronald Reagan administration, right? So his main goal was winning the Cold War and rolling back communism. So he's going to kind of go back to that 1950 idea of like détente and just like kicking butt. Before we lost the Vietnam War, he's bringing confidence in, and he's going to really build up the United States military might. Here you have Gorbachev. Gorbachev is the guy. He has the birthmark on his head. Kind of look at him. He is the Russian prime minister, and he's the leader of the Soviet Union, and Ronald Reagan and him become pretty close and friendly, even though Ronald Reagan is trying to end communism. The way he does this is he's going to convince Gorbachev to make reforms to change communism in the Soviet Union. His name is Mikhail Gorbachev. Many historians viewed this guy as the reason the Soviet Union collapsed. Though I'm not so sure he's so bad. He was kind of pro-capitalism in some ways, right? So first thing Gorbachev's going to do is something called perestroika. And perestroika, you could say that out loud right now in your house, perestroika. It reminds me of that Perestroika, right? Perestroika, right? Anyway, Gorbachev's policy, first step towards the dismantling of the Soviet Union in favor of a free market economy, democratic elections, religious and cultural freedoms. So Perestroika is going to be a freeing of policies in the Soviet Union, right? It's not publicly said that it's going to kill communism, but it that's what it does, because Perestroika brings more free market into Soviet Union. So McDonald's opens up in the Soviet Union during this time period of Perestroika. Democratic elections, so they're going to have actually free elections, and they're going to start to loosen their policy on religion, meaning that people can now choose whatever religion, build churches and cultural freedoms. And so obviously you can see they're starting to become a little, because of Perestroika, Gorbachev is moving the Soviet Union to be a little bit more like the United States. And the reason why he does this, he doesn't do it to end communism. He does it because the Soviet Union is suffering. I said at the beginning of this video, even though they look like they're very strong militarily, culturally they're suffering. Their economy is shot, which is why he's introducing a free market to try to get their economy going. Their people do not have the same quality of life as America, and they don't have the same freedoms that Americans have. And this looks very bad in the world. And so Gorbachev does Perestroika to try to make the Soviet Union great like the United States, to show the world that they can be great. Obviously, it's also going to have the effect where it's going to just kind of kill the Soviet Union, but that's neither say, we're not going to talk about that. Glasnost and Perestroika. All right, so Glasnost, we got to talk about Glasnost now. Glasnost is an increased openness and transparency in government institutions and activities in the Soviet Union. Soviet citizens could discuss publicly the problem of their system and seek solutions. One of the reasons why Glasnost was passed was because of Chernobyl. Chernobyl is this huge disaster, and the Soviet government hides it. They keep it quiet. They don't talk about it. They lie to the Russian people about it and the Ukrainian people. And they talk about how it's under control and it's not that dangerous. And and it turns out it is the worst nuclear disaster in human history. And so what happens is, they have to literally evacuate an entire city. Today, you can go on YouTube and you can watch people like sneak into the Chernobyl zone, and video games like Call of Duty have maps in like the Chernobyl zone, and this whole city is evacuated. Now you have this entire, we're talking apartment buildings, skyscrapers, hospitals, all evacuated. So crazy stuff. And so after Chernobyl, Gorbachev has to pass Glasnost. Glasnost is this idea that, okay, we know, everyone knows that we lied about Chernobyl, so we're gonna create this program that's going to open up the transparency of government institutions. We're going to show you what the government's doing so that people build trust back into the Soviet government. And people are now allowed to talk publicly about and criticize their government, which we do in the United States all the time. You guys know this. If you ever watch Fox News or MSNBC or CNN, all they do is criticize the government, or right, and they make fun of Trump and they praise Trump and they're fighting back and forth. Well, in Russia before Glasnost, you were not allowed to do that. If CNN criticized Donald Trump, they would have been arrested, right? But now, obviously in America, we have freedom of transparency. You're allowed to criticize the government. But in the Soviet Union, you were not until Glasnost was passed. So now you have an opening of the market. You have McDonald's moving in, right? You have democratic elections with Perestroika. You have people getting cultural freedoms. And now you have a loosening of policies within the government and a more of a transparency and allowing people to speak freely and criticize the government. And here you have, at first, here's Gorbachev as an adorable cartoon, and you have the baby, the big fat baby called Glasnost. And if she's like this as a baby, what will she be like when she's grown up? Meaning, the moment he started to move on Glasnost and allow people to criticize the government, everybody started criticizing the Soviet government because there was a lot of mistakes about it. And it was almost like he regretted doing it immediately, which is why he's carrying this baby, and this baby's just giant problem beating him up, right? But he's like, oh my God, if I let people to start to do this now, what's going to happen in 10 years when people really start to do it? And then here, of course, the United States has been pushing, Ronald Reagan has been pushing That's true. Well, Rocky is another example of the 1980s of these pro-American movies. So here you have the United States is always trying to get the Soviet Union to open up, right? One way that we can fight, think about it. One way that the United States, and Ronald Reagan realized this, that we can fight communism and the Soviet Union is not with war. Remember, it's a Cold War. We're not actually fighting. He could do it if we can change the Soviet Union. We can make the Soviet Union more like America, and then we don't have to fight them, right? If we turn the Soviet Union capitalist, if we introduce McDonald's, if we introduce freedoms for people in the Soviet Union, they're going to want to abandon communism, and then they will kill themselves. They will destroy their own country, and then they will become a free capitalist country. And so we don't have to go to war with the Soviet Union. We could destroy them with our culture. And that's what Ronald Reagan does, and that's one of the secrets of Ronald Reagan, and one of the reasons why he is responsible for bringing the Soviet Union to the end. So you have perestroika, which is free market, new freedoms for the people, right? You have glasnost, which is an opening of their government and allowing people to criticize their government. And you have Ronald Reagan, in the background, kind of pushing for Russia to become more like America. And then you have Chernobyl on top of that. And these four things ultimately are going to lead to the destruction of the Soviet Union. So the question of the day today is, why do you think Gorbachev started to give Soviet citizens more freedoms? Was this the beginning of the end of the Soviet Union? And why not? So what I'm going to do here is I have a video to show too that we're going to watch. It's a 5-minute video. We're going to watch it in a minute. But before we do that, I'm going to update your Google Classroom. So I believe I need to go here first. Yeah. Google Doc. Here we go. Question of the day. And remember, we're no longer having questions of the day on Friday. We're going to have Fun Day Fridays, right? Question of the day, and this is for Monday, May 4th through Thursday, May, what is that? I don't even know. I know I spelled Thursday wrong. Everyone relax. Thursday, May 7th. Thursday, May 7th. Period. And then we're going to have Monday, and the question of the day for Monday is, why do you think... there you go. So, I still spelled it wrong. Don't judge me, James. I know you're sitting over there thinking. I know you are, Delaney. You're criticizing me. Don't do it. Be positive. Make that big. There we go. So here, we're going to call this question of the day. There we go. Perfect. Now what we're going to do is we're going to come here. We're going to go here. No, we're in the wrong one. Hold on. Everyone relax. Oh. Bugger. Hold on. I messed up. Share this. We're going to share this with L. Bolger. I got to share. I did on my private account. I got to do it on my school account. Yeah, we're going to send that. There we go. It's shared. Now let's open this up. Here we go. Yeah, that's what I want. All right. Good. Let's go, Google. I think I messed this all up. Everyone just relax. You see a little guy in the background? Yeah. Everyone say hi to Jeremy. Here, I'm going to turn slow chat off. Slow chat is now off. He's saying hi. You got what?
A flower.
How was your school, by the way?
Good.
Oh, look, he made a Lego flower. Isn't that adorable?
My mom made it.
Oh.
It was a very long time ago.
You're cheating.
I'm not.
You are. Let's see what my... Alright, so let's go period 2. Alright, so let's go classwork, we're going to create assignment, we're going to do question of the day, May 4 through May 7. There we go. We are only having Monday through Thursday questions. No Friday questions. Remember, you have to be here Friday live if you want to partake, because I'm not saving that lesson. So just give you guys a heads up on that one. All right. And then we're gonna add. Google Drive. Hopefully it works. There it is. Beautiful. Add that up. We're gonna make a big copy for every student. We're going to. Hey, do you know what we have to do today, by the way? Which is kind of fun. I should have made too late. Oh, no, I didn't assign it yet. Perfect. Sweet.
What's funny?
Oh, so we're doing one of those with JJ. We're doing one of those drive-by birthday parties today at 3 o'clock, which we haven't done yet. But, you know, life in the quarantine, that's what you do.
Oh, someone help me.
How many more weeks of school do we have? We're going to go all the way to June 26th. So, like, normally school would have been till June 26th, but the last 2 weeks would have been finals. But since we're not having finals, everything's going to go to June 26th anyway. So, there you go. Do you think it would happen if Chernobyl ever happened? No, I do. Nick, great question. I do not think the Soviet Union would have collapsed if Chernobyl never happened. Or at least it would not have collapsed in that decade. I think it would have been pushed back another 10, 15 years, maybe even 20, 25 years. And in that time, it could have fixed itself and been much better, you know? Like, who knows? So I think Chernobyl happening totally ended the Soviet Union. But, Nick, good question. I do think that Chernobyl happened because the Soviet Union stunk. And, so you could say Chernobyl caused the Soviet Union to fall, but I would say the Soviet Union's poor system caused Chernobyl, which then caused them to fall, you know? It's kind of like a drug addict, you know? A drug addict overdoses on drugs. And you could say, well, they died because they overdosed. But I would say, well, they died because they were doing drugs, and then because they were doing drugs, they overdosed, and then they died. So it's like, you know, it all causes this up.
It's like Tao.
Kind of. All right. So we're gonna watch a little video before we end for today. I have a video saved up. Where is it? Gotta find my videos. Here it is.
Flower.
All right. So I'm gonna mute myself. And I'm gonna mute the music.
All right.
And then we're gonna watch this video. Let me pause my music. Let me go here. Let's get the audio. Up. All right, audio's up, and here we go. Ready? So this is going to be the fall of the Soviet Union explained in 5 minutes. I'm going to post the link to this video in the chat. I'm going to try to leave this up. So if you watch this might stay up. But if I get copyrighted, I'm going to delete this video, and then you'll just have to go into the chat at this time and click on it and watch it yourself. Not in the chat, in the description of the video. But hopefully it's live. This is by the Life Guide. I really appreciate them letting us hopefully show this to my students live in my virtual lesson. So here we go. You guys ready? I'm gonna make myself. I'm gonna make myself disappear. Nah, you guys like seeing me, don't you? I know you do. Did I just make that awkward, Jay?
Yes.
Yeah, I did.
Very awkward.
Very awkward. Is that true, guys? Do you want me to stay on screen?
I heard that the flower.
No, Tyler. I mean, we can talk about Spetsnaz later, but Mr. Vulger's technically spreading communist propaganda. That's not true. I'm teaching you about communism. There's a difference. So, yeah. Do you want me to stay on screen, or do you stay? All right, I'll stay. We're gonna stay. Here we go. You ready?
Want flower?
No. Here we go. I'm going to mute me and then kind of come back in when I have to.
On the 25th of December, 1991, the world watched as the most powerful communist country in history collapsed. Following the resignation of Mikhail Gorbachev, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or USSR, dissolved into 15 independent states, marking the Federation's downfall and ending the Cold War, which had lasted 44 years between the East and the West. The reasons for the collapse are subject to much debate. However, many place blame on the 8th and final leader of the Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev. In 1985, Gorbachev was elected General Secretary of the Communist Party. For many, this was a relief and sign of hope, as he promised a program of reform and fundamental change. The Soviet economy had come to a halt after a 20-year period known as the era of stagnation. This time of political and economic stagnation came under the leadership of Leonid Brezhnev, the fifth leader of the USSR. Stagnation thrived under Brezhnev, as the leaders of the Soviet Union were comfortable in their positions and did not feel they needed to implement change.
All right, real quick, the era of stagnation is talking about their failed economy. Throughout the 1960s and 70s and leading into the 1980s, the communist leader, their country was powerful militarily, but they lacked their economy was shot. People were not making money. The quality of life of Russians was not high. Everything was pretty bad, and they called this the era of stagnation. And he's saying that the Soviet Union, their leaders up to this point, didn't really want to make change because they were in high positions. They were powerful people in the government. They didn't care about the people. And it isn't until Gorbachev comes around where he's going to try to fix this. And the way he tries to fix this is perestroika. And that's how he's going to stop this era of stagnation. By the way, that's a bad word, stagnation. You always want to be improving. You don't want to be, stagnation means like you're stuck. So if I said, oh, you're not growing as a person, you're stuck in an era of stagnation, that means you're not growing. You're the same you've always been. And that's not good. You guys know who play sports. You always want to improve.
I kind of wish I was still 6 years old.
Wow, we're moving on.
This meant innovation was scarce, and the USSR both politically and economically was lagging far behind the Western world. The Soviet Union was also in the midst of the Cold War with the West, and the nuclear arms race was draining a lot of its resources. Gorbachev tried to de-escalate the Cold War, proposing a 50% reduction in nuclear weapons. However, his proposal was rejected in 1986. Stagnation, coupled with a high military budget, led to a crippled Soviet Union, which Gorbachev attempted to fix with his reforms.
All right, stagnation coupled with a high military budget. Ronald Reagan is one of the reasons why they had a high military budget, because when Ronald Reagan became president, he spent a ridiculous amount of money improving the United States military to bring back our honor and our pride after the fall of Vietnam. And Gorbachev has to keep up with that. They can't let the United States just pour money into their military and make the United States stronger than the Soviet Union. So as Ronald Reagan is improving our military, the Soviet Union is then forced to try to keep up with us. And by doing this, we're kind of bankrupting the Soviet Union. It was kind of a genius plan by Ronald Reagan.
These modifications came in the form of perestroika and glasnost. Perestroika, or restructuring, allowed parts of the centrally planned economy to be opened up to private enterprise. By introducing market mechanisms, Gorbachev hoped the economy would be revitalized, as the centrally planned economy could not meet the demands of the population, from production to the prices of goods. Part of perestroika was the encouragement of joint ventures, which allowed foreign firms to establish businesses in the USSR. This later saw the first McDonald's open in Moscow in 1990. In 1988, cooperatives were also legalized, allowing small-scale businesses to be established. These businesses could set their own prices and keep their own profits, resulting in a thriving sector of small shops, restaurants, and cafes. However, within just a few years, the reforms so many had hoped for had not become a reality. Price control still remained in most businesses, as did most government controls over the means of production. Gorbachev's reforms therefore amounted to nothing more than half measures, incapable of creating the favoured economic results so many had expected. The other reform was known as glasnost, or transparency. The Communist Party had become rife with corruption and nepotism, resembling a power block of inefficient and self-serving politicians. Realising this, Gorbachev introduced glasnost, which encouraged open discussion and began the process of democratization. This resulted in a wave of criticism against the party, with many leading reformers resigning. Streamlining of the party also took place, whereby departments of the Central Committee were reduced from 20 to 9, with further clampdowns on corruption also being implemented.
So all this talk of glasnost and corruption, right? So I said space politics, a lot of politics going on here. Basically what they're saying is during the 1980s, there was a lot of change happening within the Soviet political system. And this change is ultimately going to lead to their downfall, right? So even on paper, the Soviet Union seems strong, but inside their system, they're starting to force change and fall apart a little bit by glasnost and things like this.
Perhaps the most significant of his reforms was seen at the 19th Party Conference in June 1988, whereby Gorbachev extended the principle of multi-candidate elections, later resulting in the abolition of Article 6 in March 1990, ending the Communist Party's monopoly of power. By the end of the year, the Communist Party was powerless. Local elections had seen Communist candidates defeated across the country, with Leningrad seeing the opposition gain 60% of the seats. Russian nationalist Boris Yeltsin also played a significant role. Gorbachev's main opponent, Yeltsin, won the Moscow mayoral election and used the position as a platform to encourage nationalist movements, both in the non-Russian republics and within Russia itself. Nationalists saw the removal of the Brezhnev doctrine as a signal that a declaration of independence might be accepted.
All right, so now think about this. So Glasnost, he brings about perestroika and Glasnost. He brings about openness. People start criticizing the government. He allows democratic elections, thinking he's going to save the Soviet Union, communism, by giving people more freedom, since that's what they're complaining about. That's what they're lacking. But it backfires on them, because when they have their elections, people start voting against the Communist Party. And this is a disaster for the Soviets, because they're like, oh my God, we did this to get people to trust the Communist Party. And instead, what do? They vote against the Communist Party, and it just makes the whole thing kind of start to fall apart.
The Brezhnev doctrine was the policy of military intervention whenever a satellite state tried to move away from communism. By ending this, Gorbachev removed his control over the satellite states without replacing the policy with anything that would retain his control. So on the 11th of March 1990, Lithuania declared itself an independent nation, the first of the Soviet republics to do so. Independence movements quickly grew in the non-Russian satellite states, many holding free elections as a result of the Glasnost reform. Soviet regimes quickly collapsed without military backing from the USSR, seeing the destruction of the Berlin Wall on November 9, 1989, and many other Soviet leaderships failing elsewhere. Multiple factors played a role in the collapse of the Soviet Union, with many placing blame on Gorbachev and his failed reforms, and others viewing the event as inevitable due to the negative legacy of Brezhnev. The downfall of the USSR can be attributed to a combination of factors, from high military spending and a foreign policy that bred nationalist sentiment, to an economy crippled by years of stagnation and neglect. It is impossible to place the fall of the Union on one factor alone. Whatever the cause may be, the downfall of the Soviet Union was a pivotal event in recent history, marking the end of a massive economic and political superpower that helped shape the events of the 20th century.
Alright, so that video was awesome. That's just, that video was by The Life Guide. Awesome. So I just want to say this, right? So he said at the end, there's not one thing that causes the Soviet Union to collapse, right? There's not. There are a series of several things that cause the Soviet Union to collapse, like their economy being shot, so their quality of life not being as good as the West in America or in Europe, and so the way they try to fight that is by bringing in more capitalist businesses like McDonald's and other things like that. They start to loosen their rules on capitalism. They start to give people more freedoms, thinking it's going to make them happier. But instead, what it does is people with freedoms, they're going to express themselves. And they do this by criticizing the government. Glasnost is that policy of allowing people to criticize the government and to try to fight corruption and to allow democratic elections. But when they do this, people immediately start voting against the Soviet Union and against communism. And many members of the Soviet Union, right, Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, Poland, Ukraine, they start to vote against the communists, and they start to break away. And it all is a slippery slope now. It's all starting to fall apart. And then you have Chernobyl happening on top of this. You have they're going bankrupt trying to keep up with the United States arms race that Ronald Reagan has started. And you have all these new freedoms. And all of this perfect storm is the reason why the Soviet Union falls apart. And they ultimately decide to disband in 1991. Now, it's very, very important for me to say this. We were wrong about one thing, right? He says at the end of the video that the Soviet Union is this world superpower and it collapses. The Soviet Union collapses, but Russia as a superpower does not. And we learned this today, okay? So as the Soviet Union collapses, throughout the 1990s, after the Soviet Union collapses, Russia is rebuilding themselves. And in the early 2000s, Russia is back as a superpower. And so even the communism in the Soviet Union has collapsed. Russia as a superpower, they're still a nuclear power. They still have probably the second strongest military in the world. And they are still there today in the year 2020 as a kind of a superpower. They're not quite on the level anymore of the United States like they used to be, but they're right there behind us, and they're definitely a powerful country. So let's not, even though the Soviet Union collapses and communism dies, Russia itself is still there, and they're still a very powerful country, and some people even think as a threat with Vladimir Putin and things like that. So that is today's lesson. Please make sure to like the video. Thank you, Stephen. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please make sure that you do the question of the day. You can research further if you need to. Watch this video. I kind of show this video. This will help you with the question of the day. Again, if I get copyrighted, I'm not going to show this. And then if you're like, where's that video? Just go in and click the link. And that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. JJ, you want to say goodbye?
Bye.
Bye. Goodbye.
Hey, Dad.
Yeah. Sure. Thank you for the flower. Oh. Broke it. Oh. I picked your flower.
You.
Don't hit me. Come on. Oh, yeah, he's got Cuphead. Look, they noticed your Cuphead shirt. Did anyone know what my starting thing was? Does anyone know what this is? Hold on. Hold on. Let's shrink ourselves. Does anyone know what this is? Anyone? Come on, in chat. Anyone know?
Wait, is this your game?
The stem is green, Mark. That's why the stem's invisible. The flower itself is like a pink. Does anyone know what this is? Huh? This was my starter video, and I also played some cool music. Do you want to hear the music I played? I played this music. Does anyone know what this is from? Don't, JJ, don't spoil it. Shush it. I know you know what it is. Anyone know what this is? Where's my chat? Come on, first person in chat gets props from Mr. Oh man, Techno Charmander. That's got to be like, what is that? Brendan Connolly? It's got to be Brendan Connolly. He's the only one who knows this. He's absolutely right. It is Metroid Prime. Congratulations. And the music is Brinstar from Super Metroid. You were correct, Brendan Connolly, the genius.
I played it.
It's one of the best video games ever made, by the way. It's on the Wii. It was originally on the GameCube, but if you get the Wii U, the Wii U, you can get the trilogy thing with it was on the Wii, but it's amazing. Definitely check it out. It's one of the few Wii games that I promote.
I mean, why don't you just...
Oh, that's Mark? Mark is Techno Charmander? Is that true? I don't... Why, Mark was here, though. I didn't know that. Mark, props to you, sir. I'm proud of you. That's amazing. Awesome. See, Mark, me and you have the same taste, sir. It's a phenomenal video game. Puzzles and everything.
I'd say...
Oh, you got muted by Nightbot. Well, Mark, I like that you thought on your feet and you got back in there. I would yell at Nightbot if it was a person, but it's not. It's a robot, so I can't yell at it. Brendan is key.
Wait,
oh, Nightbot, like, makes sure no one curses and stuff in my chat, and it just does its own thing, and sometimes it makes mistakes, and so people get, like, muted for the wrong reason. Anyway, that's it for today. Say goodbye, Jeremy.
Bye.
No, you're supposed to say goodbye, Jeremy. Goodbye, Jeremy. Say goodbye. No, you want to say
goodbye.
Dad, say goodbye. Watch.
Goodbye.
Let's say Dad, say goodbye.
Dad, say goodbye.
Dad, say goodbye. See? Yeah, that's it.
Bye.
Goodbye, guys. We're leaving.